You're entering Corsi Nation.
This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. It's Wednesday. It's November 19th, 2025. Well, the Senate last night voted for allowing all the Epstein documents to be printed. At least that's the way it looks in terms of the story coming out today. When you read the bill, there's still plenty of wiggle room in the bill, which is typical for Washington. So the wiggle room in the bill is that if the Attorney General makes a determination that, I'm reading from the bill, covered information may be declassified, may not be declassified, and made available in the manner that protects the national security of the United States, including methods or sources related to national security, the Attorney General shall release an unclassified summary for each of the redacted or withheld classified information. Well, that's a dodge to keep it going for a long time. All you have to do is, if the Attorney General Pam Bondi does not have the courage of letting all this stuff out, we're still going to get redacted material, and then that's what's in the redactions, and that goes on for 62 years, 63 years, just like it did the Kennedy assassination. I think the reality of the Epstein is that it is a intelligence operation. Epstein was probably a combination of CIA and Mossad, with others playing various games in between. And most likely it was aimed at blackmail, and it targeted vulnerable people who wanted sex with younger people, pedophiles, as young as you can get them. Now, there are people who have sex with babies, as insane as that is. All right, so the point is that, okay, the law is passed. I suspect most of the people who are going to be exposed are going to be Democrats. And it's already hitting the Clintons, because James Comer has vowed that if the Clintons don't show up and if they defy subpoenas to appear before Congress, they're going to get the Bannon treatment. In other words, they're going to have to go to prison. Okay, so the Clintons have not responded yet to their subpoenas requesting their testimony on their ties to Epstein. And that criminal referral, the criminal silence is going to be met with criminal referrals if James Comey sticks to his guns. That's the issue. So the Clintons want to assert that they've got presidential level clearances, although Hillary was, of course, never president. She wanted to be, but she wasn't. And the Clintons are going to try to make themselves special cases, like they always do. Comer said, "We expect to hear from Bill and Hillary Clinton." This was on the Just the News, No Noise TV show John Solomon conducts. Donald Trump answered questions for years about Jeffrey Epstein. Every day gets asked about Epstein, and he answers them in front of the American people. We've subpoenaed Republicans and Democrats. That's what Comer said yesterday. Other Democrats have been sent letters saying that they knew nothing. They've sent letters saying they knew nothing about Epstein, which would hold in court if something ever comes out that they did know something, and they've committed perjury there. That's what Comey said. But the Clintons have never responded. They're the ones in this group, in this investigation, that's never had to answer questions in front of a credible reporter, and they've never certainly answered questions from attorneys or members of Congress. So we expect the Clintons to come in, he said, or expect the Clintons to be met with the same fate that Bannon and Peter Navarro were met with when the Democrats were in control. Chris, what do you think? Epstein not going away? I've said that from the beginning. It's not easily going to go away. I think we're stuck with Epstein until we realize the extent to which people like the British Crown was involved, probably King Charles. It's going to bring down some governments before we're done. Well, I hope it does. I hope it does. It brings down a lot of congressmen as well.
I'd like to see some people who are involved in these nefarious practices brought down. I don't care what party you're from. We don't want to choose these people to lead or legislate for us. That's the number one. I believe Donald Trump actually miscalculated the importance that people have with a transparent government and the importance people have placed these Epstein files as far as wanting to know and uh, who is involved and why some of these people are holding office or powerful positions. So he miscalculated how important that was to his base. His base is not conservative Republicans. It's people who want to see the way Washington does business changed. So that's a big deal. He's trying to find a way to work around it. I suppose he can now say to the people that may have said, "But Don, I don't want these things released." Well, my hands are tied now. Congress, the House, and Senate both said we have to do this. I'm going to have to sign this. So I think he wanted this done. And now he was sitting here watching the Democrats play with this over and over, hoax after hoax after hoax, trying to implicate him. And now he can just drop a bombshell on them. And this all winds up being strategically, or at least looking from the outside in, a strategically genius move.
Well, I think Trump is going to come out okay on this because he's not involved. And I think, the constant statements about if this being just a sideshow, he doesn't understand the importance of the blackmail that was going on, or maybe he does. I'm not sure, but at any rate, we're going to get more information than we have now, and I think it'll confirm what we already know. Just give us the details of some more names, etc., of people who were involved, and some of them will probably be shocking. A couple of stories interested me. A woman was set on fire on the Chicago train. I just passing through stories this morning. This one shocked me that it happened 9:30 p.m. on Monday, this past Monday, November 17th, at the Clark and Lake Station in the Chicago's Loop District. That's right downtown. And what happened was a woman was set on fire aboard a train in Chicago. The police say they'd taken the person into custody. And evidently the two of them got into an argument. This man, a 45-year-old man, and he took out a flammable liquid can and poured his flammable liquid on her and then set her on fire. And so he ran. Police got him eventually. And we fled the scene. The woman collapsed on the platform. The fires were put out by the fire department, and the woman had burns all over her body. She remained in critical condition in the hospital as of last night. Now, why is that story important? Well, again, it shows the degree to which we have, I guess, just let our cities go to be unsafe with a tremendous amount of potential for violence at any time, and the inability of the police to be there to protect people. This is the kind of wanton, senseless attack of a stranger. Indicates that the guy who did it has got some mental illness of some kind or other, or a mental cultural illness. Now, that coupled for me with a couple of other stories that I saw that also shocked me in terms of, there's one story in particular of a woman who was traveling in a foreign country in not the Middle East, but maybe in Asia. And some guy jumps out and exposes himself to her and says, she basically wanted her to perform sex on him. Of course, the woman was shocked and ran away. But the point of the story was that women today, this new post-feminist generation of women, are being told that they're equal to men, that they're equally as strong as men, that they can cope with anything they want to cope with, that they don't need to rely on men. Men are basically useless to them, except for maybe a few minutes in procreation. And otherwise, women can do anything a man can do. Now, Phyllis Schlafly and I spent a lot of time together. She was very much of a mentor and We worked together very strongly in several projects, including defeating this North American Union, George W. Bush's Security and Prosperity Partnership of North America. And Phyllis, of course, was famous for defeating the Equal Rights Amendment, the ERA, in the Goldwater era. Now, the National Review just did a story saying that she was a propagandist because of the way she wrote. No, she was just a brilliant thinker who had the ability to articulate her ideas in ways that were direct and forceful. Okay, now what the take Phyllis would have is that this DEI and all the other nonsense that take women and try to say that they're basically, men without penises, no other differences, is insanity. The differences between men and women should be apparent to almost anybody who takes a look at it. Now, the case of strength in men and women, I always said, I remember distinctly, I was at Dartmouth University visiting, and someone posed the question about how would you describe the differences between men and women? I said, fundamentally, it's overlapping normal distributions. In other words, while there'll be some women who are stronger than men, in general, most men are stronger than women. Okay, so the distributions, men are stronger, so they're normal. The norm for men registers higher on the strength scale, and for women, lower on the strength scale. But yet, they overlap in terms of the two distributions. So the women who are at the extreme of strongest are going to be stronger than the men who are at the extreme of weakness. That's not a hard concept. That's fundamental statistics 101. Okay, but it defies the Democrats to think this way, because the Democrats are not attuned to reality or to fact-based thinking or to genuine scientific ideas. And there's also a story out today about Watson, who was the guy who came up with the double-stranded DNA. He's the guy who figured out how DNA was a double helix. And of course, he got dismissed from the universities. 2007, he was canceled because he said all social policies are based on the fact that the intelligence of Africans is the same as ours, whereas all the testing says that's not reality. Okay, now there's a lot of testing which does indicate that there are differences racially in intelligence, but it's socially and politically inappropriate to go down that route. So therefore, we have to maintain the fiction that race is not a factor in intelligence. And the idea that if you dare to investigate that, you may ruin your career. Now, but again, if cancellation and exile from universities was not enough, this James Watson, Watson, his history is to completely negate his scientific achievement. Okay, because the left tends to portray Watson as a sexist who stole ideas from his brilliant female scientist associate named Rosalind Franklin. In their telling, I'm reading from an article that's on the Federalist. In their telling, Watson was dismissive of Franklin's brilliance, used her data without permission, and just happened to beat her in the punch, figuring out the shape of DNA. Although Watson himself credited Franklin's contribution to his discovery with Crick, and he was also a sexist pig who called her Rosie and found her attractive. Okay, so in the academic world, your female colleagues can't be treated as women. They have to be treated as equals, and you better not be sexually attracted to them. Of course, two men sexually attracted in a university or two women sexually attracted to each other, that'd be okay. That's just fine. And there's a story over in about the BBC. The BBC now has, which is known for its censorship. It's a tolerance, if not celebration, of radical Islam and the rape gangs and everything that comes with Sharia law and everything else that comes with radical Islam. But there's an LGBT mafia within the BBC, which is why the BBC News has become pretty much DEI worthless. And free speech in Great Britain is virtually non-existent. All these stories go together in a fundamental way to show you the insanity of the left in what they produce, which is destroyed cities that are impossible to live in, dangerous, but they celebrate DEI, so criminals are let free and women are told they're equal to men, and that men can have babies and have periods, and we need to put tampons in men's rooms, and then there shouldn't be men in women's rooms, there should be unisex rooms, and we should promote based on race because we need to redress past grievances and oppression of minority races. And what we end up with is a country that nobody can live in. Chris, you want to come on and comment on this?
Yeah, you were talking about this. We were talking about this as far as the UK and their aversion to free speech at this point. Their state-run media, no surprise. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't put it past the media all over Western Europe, and of course our media here, to have such let's just say, strong trans mafia presence, LGBTQ mafia presence within as well. It's the way the media has been working. It's the way conservatives for a long time have been ignoring culture and journalism for a very long time, and we're talking about a generation or two behind. This is why you see all of this pervade in the underground for the last maybe 30, 40 years. This has been entrenched.
It's gotten to a point where, if our airplanes are being run by DEI air traffic controllers, who wants to fly in an airplane?
Yeah.
Or who wants to fly in one made by the DEI management of, let's just say, any company of, just pick a company whose chairman might run around in a dress, a man. You all can figure out which company that is, and airlines. But I want to transition to the economic stories that I've been following now for quite a while. Michael Snyder and the Economic Collapse blog. And I like Michael Snyder's writing. He's good. He's saying that there's parallels between 2008, 2009, when we had the subprime mortgage collapse, and what we're going through right now. And I'm seeing the same red flags. He said that in the month of October 2025, foreclosures were 19% higher than they were in October 2024. Okay, so this is the first step when a lender warns a borrower that they're in default. Okay, but it's not yet a bankruptcy or a default, but foreclosure is the first steps for saying you better start paying your debt. Okay, and this foreclosure activity has been increasing for 8 consecutive months. So we're seeing some of the markets that were the highest are having the highest rates of foreclosure. At the same time, some of the markets that were the hottest for housing are cooling off, which is indicating again that housing is in a bubble. But the tragedy is, and Charlie Kirk used to post these charts, that home ownership among young adult males has plunged to the point where many young adults are convinced they'll never become homeowners. Maybe the best they'll ever get is a townhouse or a condo, and they're starting to cost $1 million in some major cities. Okay, so again, when you see business activity slowing down, the housing market in a bubble, which could burst at any moment, and the amount of delinquent loans out there that have reached 60 days are the highest level ever recorded right now. Okay, so that the idea of subprime borrowers, at least 60 days behind in their auto loans, rose 6.65% in October, the highest level on record, according to Fitch ratings, which go back to the early 1990s, 30 years ago. All right, so this plus the amount of debt we have in the United States is a formula for a crash. Now, I've been saying this is going to develop here in Europe. I've been saying this now for a couple of years. It's happening. I've also warned you that gold is going to spike. Gold today is at $4,122 an ounce, and silver is at $52.18 an ounce. Gold and silver are going to go up in value, and they're good investments. Just if you got coins, not for their numismatic value, but just for their silver. Now, that's the brilliance, I think, of Swiss America. And if you go to Swiss America on our Corsi Nation website, Chris will show you how to navigate it. It's right in the top bar where it says gold. If you go there, and you'll see that he's right now showing you the God's Five Stones, which is our 501c3. But here now we're looking at the Swiss America. You get this Walking Liberty $50 offer for a first-time buyer. Fill out the form. It's a one-time offer, and it's an introductory offer, but you can get 250 of these coins. They're absolutely beautiful for really what they're worth in silver. And that at least gets you started with owning some precious metals. Once you've gotten started, you can begin developing the psychology of investing in precious metals. And that takes a little bit of a mind shift. But once you've done it, you're just going to get out of worthless paper dollar bills and into currency that has some potential to appreciate in its purchasing power. As you get into it, you also please read this book, How the Coming Global Crash is Going to Create an Historic Gold Rush. Call the 800 number, 1-800-519-6268. Please write this number down. Just call Swiss America, 1-800. It's a toll-free number, 1-800-519-6268. 1-800-519-6268. Get a copy of the book. Okay, now, if we take a look further at the economic news today, it's not only the internal signs in the United States, but you're seeing that, we're worldwide. Europe, which has begun persecuting Christians, is also on the door of financial collapse. Okay, so free speech is under attack, and the sacred cows of the progressive world, transgenderism, unlimited immigration, and radical communist Islam, has now mobilized the thought police throughout many European countries. Great Britain is the most frightening example, but now even there's a trial of a Finnish parliamentarian reveals how often it is that Christians who find themselves under attack. This particular congressman has spent 6 years fighting a hate speech prosecution simply for quoting passages from the Bible and defending traditional marriage. Okay, so again, if the woke are so insane that you can't even talk about traditional values, and they embrace radical Islam with Sharia law and all of its implications to violate and to ignore civil law. They won't report on rape gangs and other bizarre things, because remember, the earlier part of the show, what I was telling you was that, you could say to women, you're just like men, and you're equal to men, and you should act like this, and you should travel without fear and do whatever you want to do. There's differences between men and women that you're not going to extinguish. We fundamentally have different internal wiring in how we think and feel. And people deny that are just denying reality. And there's differences in cultures that are fundamentally different. Islam has been at war with Christianity since about the beginning. Okay, and the differences are that the whole idea of sex in Islam is as if, it was the women bewitching the men, and they have to be put in bags so they're not as attractive. And any woman with a short skirt is asking to be raped. That's the mentality. Now, if you get that mentality going, that's not all Islam. It's not every Muslim by any means. But if that particular mentality persists, Islam is down the path to jihad and wants to destroy Western civilization. Now, of course, if you say that, if I said that and had a university job, I'm sure my phone would be ringing already from the dean asking to see me this afternoon, because you're not allowed to talk like this in the university. But the fact is, these are realities, and we're ignoring the realities. Now, Donald Trump is trying very hard to do two things. Number one is establish peace in the world, and with a message of peace through prosperity, which is a very good message in the Middle East and around the world. And I fully endorse it. I think people who are middle class or even better off are not inclined to go to war till they get so massively wealthy that they want war because it's an investment, makes them their wealth double, triple from the arms manufacturing and the destruction of cities and et cetera that have to be rebuilt, and the banking money and the interest that's paid on the money that's lent. So the moneyed classes sit back and create wars that the middle class dies in, and inflation occurs, the middle class gets squeezed out. But if you take a look at the transgenders and the transhumanists, these people think that they are the super human beings who can transcend good and evil, as Nietzsche preached. And if you take a look at my book, The Truth About Neo-Marxism, Cultural Maoism, and Anarchy, you can see that we're in the anarchy stage of this progression. It is nihilistic and destructive. That book will explain to you how we got there and how we can get out of here. The best way to get out of here is get the language recovered so we don't have language perversion, so that we get back to traditional values and back to God. In the end, God always wins. God's going to win here too. But it's going to take us on following 2 Chronicles 7:14 to get on our knees and ask God to forgive us for letting the world get to this insane place. A world with nuclear weapons proliferating and nuclear weapons being created that have no ability to be stopped. Hypersonic weapons, all kinds of new cruise missiles with atomic engines that can circle the globe for an indefinite period of time to be used when wanted. Russia's evidently developed one of those. We are at a precipice in human history where we have the capability of destroying ourselves, or we have the mandate to come back to traditional values and to quit all this nihilistic, Marxist, cultural Maoism, extremism that's aimed at destroying all that's good about human beings. I just don't believe that God created this place to lose or for Satan to win. So Europe, which thinks it also can go to war with Russia, by the way, the European Parliament is passing laws and ordinances that say that when they go to war with Russia, armies can move across countries without having to pay, border crossing charges, etc., and they won't be stopped in their transition from country to country in Europe. If Europe wants to go with Russia, Europe is absolutely insane. Coexisting with Russia is a much better idea. At any rate, we have to get through some of these insanities, and we've throughout my entire life reporting on politics and studying it, I am constantly amazed at how wrong thinking enters into politics so easily. With a little bit of truth serum, just the dedication true and what's not true. That's the fundamental remedy to this age we're in. So I'm doing this trilogy. It's the truth about energy, global warming, and climate change. So only the truth is going to set us free. The truth about neo-Marxism, cultural Maoism, and anarchy. These are the two I've written. I'll write the third, hopefully start it this next year. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. Thank you for joining us. We're doing podcasts every weekday on CorsiNation.com. We'll be back tomorrow. God bless.